part of this workshop where we will further explore some of the main themes we were discussing today. And in the panel, we have Irina Toma, who is the coordinator of EDIH in Romania, so the hub that was supporting the digitalization pilot in the construction industry. Irina, for me, you appear a little bit frozen, but just to confirm that you were here with us. We also have, great, hi, super. We also have Gabor from Innomine. He's the CEO of Innomine, which is a digital innovation hub that was supporting the automotive digitalization pilot in Hungary. Gabor, I see you, so that's great. And finally,
good morning, everyone. Hello.
Hi. And finally, we have Anca Sandu from Unit H2B, which is the construction and engineering company based in Romania, which was involved in the construction pilot as well. Hi, Anca. Hi. Could you turn on your camera if possible?
My camera is on. Is it not visible?
Yes, I see it. Great. Sorry, maybe
Hi.
it was a glitch.
Nice to see you and nice to meet you.
Great. And maybe before we start, I actually, again, have a quick poll for the participants in the room and also for the panelists, as we will start with the topic of, again, kind of collaborating and reaching out to the companies beyond the hub's network to see how this can be done. And, you know, how can companies, how can the hub successfully reach out to the companies outside their networks? So the poll should appear any moment now. So I will invite everyone to contribute to it as well. So for the options we have that hubs can participate in projects, you harness snowball effects to ask their network to connect them and to expand companies with each other. Of course, attend or organize events and conferences, trade shows, etc. Build a reputation and wait for companies to reach out. All of the above, or of course, other. So I will give a few minutes for the participants to vote. I already see quite a clear trend that all of the above seems relevant. But maybe, Irina, we can start from you because your hub actually organized an open call for the purpose of this digital innovation pilot with the goal to actually reach out to a company that was not part of your network. So maybe you can share some insights or lessons learned about this approach.
Sure. And for us, construction was a new industry to tap into. So we didn't know a lot of companies in the ecosystem at first, and we had to rely on building an ecosystem and on existing partners who are dealing with digitalization in the construction industry or with the construction and architecture industry as a whole. So starting with the mapping of the ecosystem through short research of the sector, we identified the BIMTech Association that deals with promoting digitalization in the construction industry, and they were very helpful in highlighting both what is happening within the sector and also who are the actors we should be reaching out to. And we also engaged with the Order of Architects in Romania, who promoted our call. And this is how we actually got in contact with Unit H2B, the architecture company that Anca is representing, and who participated in the pilot project. And so we had more than 20 companies, I think, that have registered, but only ended up selecting one. And if I may already say something about the pluses and the minuses of this, I would say as a plus, we already had sort of a mapping of needs by asking so many companies to say what their needs are and how we could collaborate during the pilot. But as a minus, we encountered a lot of complexity in running an open call because the needs were very diverse. And we had to both design services tailored to those needs, but also try to cluster the needs and see what we can provide. So I'd recommend this for new hubs, but also consider the time necessary. for selecting companies.
Great. Thank you, Irina. Anca, I'm also curious, what was the experience from the company's perspective? What motivated you to, first of all, participate in the open call and then to continue participating in the pilot?
Yes, well, first, for us, digitalization is a constant approach and a very important aspect in the transformation of our company. And to be able to get tailored support from a type of project such as this, we consider it an opportunity. That is why we were very eager to participate. And we are absolutely aware that there is time and effort needed to be involved in a project like this. But in any case, the digitalization process and the upgrades, they are constant, and we need to do that all the time. So this is only a great opportunity, and I would advise anyone to participate and to take the time to get to know the opportunities that that exist, and just I don't know, be present and put in the effort. So we found out from the Order of Architects initially, but it's not hard to see exactly how such an endeavor would be beneficial for a company such as ours.
Gabor, representing Innomine, your hub works with quite a wide range of companies. I'm also curious, maybe you also have some additional lessons learned on reaching out to companies beyond your initial network.
Yes, thank you. We as Innomine have a track record of more than 5 years to act as a digital innovation hub. Therefore, especially on the countryside, we do have a quite intense relationship and network, especially in the small and medium-sized companies, especially in the manufacturing and agri-food sector. And for us, throughout the last few years, the key challenge was around digitalization to build trust with the companies, because usually we started to talk about digitalization, and the small businesses said, okay, that's fine, this is good for the international companies, good for the multinationals, but this is not something for us. And then we had to build trust, and we had to show good examples how digitalization can be an enabler for especially the small companies, and how to implement, how to show very exact cases how the management or the CEO can benefit from a digital solution.
Great, thank you. And I think you really mentioned a very important point related to trust building. We see this in the pilots, and it's relevant for new companies, but also for companies that are already familiar with the hub's activities. And again, I have a poll question here for the audience, but also I will pose this to the panel on, how can companies successfully build relationships with the hubs and vice versa. And because we know that trust is indeed a key enabler. And maybe Anca and Irina, I will start with you on what worked to build a trust in your case. But still, I will give it a few more moments for the poll to appear on the screen. So the question is right now on the type of support the hubs can provide to companies, but still let's backtrack a little bit and talk about the trust. So Irina, what do you think is the essence of building trust with the companies?
So for us, this was an important element, especially since the collaboration with Unit H2B was very new. We had just known each other. And at least from my perspective, I think we managed to build trust by focusing on their needs And so really trying to understand what their issue was and to connect with them and offer services that were very tailored to their needs. Also coming up with very strong digital experts in the field and the technology that we were working with. So with BIM processes and related technologies, I think this also helped. And yeah, following up on the process and making sure that what we offer as a hub is a value added to the company. So these are 3 elements that I'd underline.
Maybe anything to add, Anca, from your side?
Yes, and I think it's quite the same, but from our point of view with what Irina said, I would call them the 3 C's of trust building. It's competence, consistency, and communication. Competence is the first building block because, as she said, there were 2 types of well put together aspects in the project. So one was the way the project and the first assessment came from the hub and the way they approached us in a very professional manner. And the second, indeed, was their connection with specialists and with associations from local that are highly experienced, and they are exactly tailored on our part of the construction industry. So that was a great mix in managing to clarify competence. Consistency, I mean that they were, like Irina said, all the time present. Our connection was continuous. We started working on the project, and everything was from start to finish consistently well tied together. And that is done through communication. And I always felt that we had a very, very good approach in that. So for us, it was a very good experience from the point of view of trust.
Great. Competence, consistency, communication. Note taken. And maybe Gabor, something to add here? I saw you were taking some notes as well.
Yeah, well, I think that trust building is key, and for us in regional ecosystem, it was very important to talk to opinion leaders, and that's a very good technique. But I can also recommend to the other hubs to work with to convince the local opinion leaders. This might be some CEOs or some key influencers, some people from universities, even some people from the policy level. And these people can help a lot to build trust and build a relationship with the ecosystem players. And then for us, another very important point was to build a common language. Because in often case what we have realized that we used a language which was too much digital, and that was too much often cases related to European funds or to any other languages which was not so much known by the CEOs of the companies. And usually what we have found out that communication is key. And we had to build different types of communication tricks to really get through the message what we really wanted to do. And I think that simplification is a key word, because often case we really need to simplify things to be able to reach the proper impact.
Great. Thank you so much. Indeed, opinion leaders and establishing a shared language with the companies that we work with is key. And so we had a question in the poll on the type of services that are most relevant for companies, and the responses were quite scattered. We see that defining a digitalization roadmap is very important. Consultations, networking, accessing financing, and also digital maturity assessments were all selected, with the roadmaps being the most selected the most often. Nevertheless, the pilots show that hubs had to provide a wide range of services depending on the company's maturity. and their needs. I would still like to reflect a little bit in your experiences, not just from the pilots, but from beyond. What type of services are usually required or relevant the most for the companies that pursued hubs support? Irina or Gabor, either one of you can start.
Well, Irina, do you wish to start or shall I? Okay.
You can start if you want, yeah.
In terms of the service portfolio, I think there is a very important point that SMEs are a very heterogeneous group. So both in terms of digital maturity, also in terms of industry, they do have very different needs. And I believe that that is very important to make sure that we as digital innovation hubs are able to talk to them and offer to the SMEs the things what they need. And I think, and again, going back to the opening presentation and use case, that it is very important to focus on the business needs of the SMEs. And what we could see that many entities are trying to replicate solutions and services what they used for the big corporates or for the enterprise segment. And usually this doesn't really work, because the SMEs really want to have a quick and impactful solutions on the field that they can use. And then also, like in the case of Matro, which is already a relatively advanced company and quite big in terms of size among the SME groups, we could already see some types of planning, but even in their case, they were in the beginning looking for a very tangible result, how they will have an impact of their investment, because they are still a relatively big company, but they do not want to risk with their investment. So therefore, it was very important for them to really make an investment which pays off already within 1 year.
Great. Irina, would you have anything to add?
I would say that when we did the survey for needs assessment and what kind of services the companies in the construction sector needed, a lot of them were interested in financing opportunities, because they were afraid that everything sounded very nice, but they wouldn't be able to finance these investments otherwise. And also many of them said we would like to think about potential services or a redesign of the business model, taking into account these new technologies we're acquiring. But when we actually started working with Unit H2B, we also realized the services need to be adapted also to the level of digitalization of the company itself, and the approach with which you collaborate with an SME that is just starting out, that does not have a digital transformation roadmap, and one that is already relatively mature or advanced and just needs fine-tuning, tailoring, or much more punctual expert knowledge, is very different. And I'd encourage other digital innovation hubs to consider and maybe cluster companies also based on the needs that they have at different stages of their digitalization and digital transformation journey.
Absolutely. Maybe Anca, again, from your perspective, Unit H2B, as Irina mentioned, is a more digital mature company. What type of services were the most valuable for you during the pilot from the hub and also from the Data Association? You are on mute.
Sorry, for us, a very important step was the assessment, because we entered the project without having any clear expectations and without knowing what we would want to obtain. We have many ideas, but we don't know what's realistic to obtain, because and before building trust, we don't know what the hub and the program can offer us in the period of time associated with the project. And what I found a very positive aspect was the openness they had towards assessing our company and tailoring our KPIs and finding a plan together that we thought would work. One that had some KPIs and some targets for this particular period of time for the project, but also trying to identify things that we could maybe in the long term approach and optimize. So that part of assessing digital maturity and our digitalization or optimization needs was very important. And also very important was for us the presence of their specialists and their know-how for the similar companies and an overall view of our design sector of the construction industry, because we know we make constant efforts and we know digitalization is important, but where exactly we are compared to the rest of the market is always a question, because there's no assessment for that really. So that was for us a plus also.
Great, thank you. Now I will ask maybe perhaps a slightly more challenging question, as both Irina and Gabor suggested that the hubs need to adapt based on the company's digital maturity levels. Yet at the same time, I'm curious, how feasible is this flexibility to really tailor the approach to each company? And maybe what successful strategies have your hubs been harnessing or trying out to actually provide services that match different companies' needs? So maybe Irina, again, to start with you, as we're going a bit in a circle with our order.
So we've thought a lot about this, and I don't think I have definite answers, but maybe just to speak from our experience, we've always thought that we could try to work through a clustering method and try to work with groups and bring companies together based on different common elements in order to be able to work with them in a more efficient manner. The experience we've had with needs assessment through this Smart Industrial Remoting project has shown this implies quite some energy from the hub and the experts and that the companies are indeed heterogeneous, and they don't often have exactly the same needs. Maybe they have similar maturity levels, or you could make a general orientation based on their different levels, but when it comes to the exact problem in their company, they each have a very different business model, and maybe the solution that they each need is needs a bit of tailoring. And we're exploring different ways to be able to approach this. I think part of the solution could be in working together more with technology providers and seeing if they can further take on technology audits, for example, when things get very technical with a particular industry. And another approach that I've seen other hubs take is to provide sort of the free services through the digital innovation hubs, and then provide more in-depth services as a paid service of the hub. And we have not implemented this yet, but depending on the developments that we see in implementation, we could consider this in the future so that we can actually provide the proper support needed for true digital transformation.
Gabor, anything to add?
Yes, in our case, the international knowledge transfer was a very important factor in building the service portfolio. And this project, the smart remoting, is one of the examples, but even in the past, we have participated in some I4MS projects or some other European Commission-driven projects where we were able to act as a digital innovation hub, and we could promote cascade funding financing. And then with that, we could help to some local SMEs to really get aware of digitalization, and then to some selected companies go through the whole digitalization quests, or at least a few projects. And I think that this is very important because one of the most demanded service for when we start talking about digitalization is the access to funding. And why is this? This is, I think, not because the companies doesn't have the money, but it's a different factor. And I think that the very important point is to help to reduce risks connected to the digitalization. Because when we talk about smaller companies, they do have a less capability to go into risk, because if there is a huge corporate and they run, I don't know, 50 innovation projects and 40 out of them fail, but the 10 still make enough result for them to operate successfully. But if we talk about a smaller company which can run only one project, then the failure is not really an option, because the failure will mean then a major issue for the company. And in our case, that's the best option if we can also offer some EU funding, some small amount, and this doesn't mean to be really huge amounts of funds, but these are key enabler for the small businesses to start digitalization, and of course for us to build the services and then use our champions in the ecosystem. You are muted, Barbora.
So I also fall for this trick every once in a while, it seems. So we actually have a comment on this in the chat that's slightly related. It's from EDIH City Lab Academy. And it's somewhat of a question also, but also a bit of an idea that with regard to the services provided by the hubs, the comment is saying that, well, the options are for EDIHs in isolation, but the comment is also suggesting that there is a potential for an initiative for EDIHs working jointly and collaborating, perhaps building some connections when it comes to companies' maturities, because it seems that it's possible maybe to somewhat segment the type of services companies need based on their levels of maturity, and maybe then collaborate across as hubs to maybe create some methodologies, exchange ideas, exchange practices. And I would just like to, open this comment also for you to reflect, Irina and Gabor, and to maybe also share some reactions on this.
Well, I am very happy to share, because honestly, in our case, we are part of an EDIH on artificial intelligence. And honestly, I cannot really see that EDIHs are working in isolation, because at least in our case, we do have a very intense network and cooperation with all the EDIHs and DIHs in Hungary. Last week, there was a joint press event, for example. And also internationally, we do have a very good and very operational cooperation with plenty of other digital innovation hub, European digital innovation hubs from multiple countries, and this international knowledge transfer and networking is key for our operation and for us to learn and to access the necessary knowledge.
Great.
And we've also drawn quite quite a bit of inspiration from the Digitalization in Construction, Digital Innovation Hub, or at least the platform constructed around this with resources for the digitalization and construction sector. And so, yes, there is a lot of knowledge in the network, and yeah, it's important to tap into it and to mature these connections that have been established for corridors and through other projects.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, and also thank you for the comments in the chat. I will maybe move on to another topic because I think it's also relevant to discuss. We touched upon in the collaborative session on the importance of successfully managing a digital intervention, and to also making sure that the digital intervention is sustainable. Maybe I would like to turn to Anca to ask you about how do you approach sustainability of digital interventions from the long-term perspective? Because my understanding that this pilot is actually a piece of a bigger puzzle for EDIH to be when it comes to digitalizing.
Yes, I don't know how things are in other domains, maybe because as I've seen, there are some projects of digitalization that are more, I don't know, they have a start and a finish, and they have a great impact for us because we're more than 10 years old as a company, and we started partially digitalized because the design sector in the construction industry is has been for a long time in digitalizing in progress, so to speak. So this trend of embracing BIM technology, for instance, it's something that we have been working on and implementing for the past, I don't know, almost 10 years since everything started to clarify. So sustainability is something that's somehow natural. You have to be sustainable in your efforts to digitalize. What is also important is to generate for the entire company, and this is easier done from a management point of view, a value of change. So understanding that progress and continuous know-how infusion and change management, these should be core pillars in the evolution of the company. So I think that is how you generate sustainability, by all the time approaching some new possibilities, in documenting, implementing. Of course, there is time that and effort that has to be continuously put into this part of the business's existence. But only from my point of view, from our point of view, only in this way you can ensure that you keep up with this moment that, at least from in our domain, is a moment of extremely rapid change, and everything evolves. We are dependent on software. We are dependent on a lot of external factors and external companies that evolve in the same time and that embrace digitalization in any type and form, and we have to keep flexible, because that is the only way. So you have to summarize in terms of how you keep it sustainable. You have to be flexible, and you have to have an approach to change management. And you have to maybe be less sensitive to in our case, small, but I can realize they can be bigger, lows in productivity and losses that we find along the way for the learning curve. So it's not just you go up and up all the time. It's effort and it's dynamic. So there are many things to be said here from a company's point of view. It's a very complex subject.
Absolutely, and probably a half an hour panel discussion is not enough to entangle it. I would like to actually turn also to the hubs here, you know, how, looking at the type of support hubs can provide to help companies manage digital interventions. And we also have a question on this in the chats, somewhat linked to this, with regard to how the type of support changes depending on the size of the company. So we heard, you know, during the previous presentation of Surfateka that because of the fire, the company could actually really transform how it approaches digitalization. So switching from an incremental approach to a whole of organization approach, and the hub there played a central role. In other companies, it might be more driven by the management, that the digitalization, the management has a clear vision in the direction it wants to go. So I'm curious also what has been the hub's experience. How does the company size and maturity can also affect what type of supports the hub can give it to help it digitalize? Do you pull it by the shoestrings, or does the company drive the initiative forward? I will again allow either Irina or Gabor to start.
Well, firstly, I wanted to comment on the question you had a bit earlier, that I think once you start with a company and you've already worked on one digitalization project or pilot, if the relationship was beneficial, you tend to continue with it. So sustainability also comes from this trust building and seeing added value. And also, I liked Gabor's remark also about cascade funding and the continuous funding opportunities that arise. And we've had companies that we've continued for years and that have matured, and you continue to offer different services depending on their level. And how they've evolved, and new opportunities arise all the time. And with regards to the question on the size of the company, I sometimes find that smaller SMEs are, it depends on a lot of factors, but sometimes smaller SMEs are more agile and they can change quicker. You see maybe a more difficult process for larger companies to try to get all their departments on board, and there's a lot more diversity there. On the other hand, smaller companies might have less capacity to for the productivity decreases that you see when you go on a new learning process. So I think it really depends on the company context, and also maybe on the industry and the age of the employees. I think I was reflecting on the fact that some companies, if they're newer companies, maybe they sometimes find it easier to hire new staff that already has part of the digital skills that they want to see. Other companies that are older might sometimes have more difficulty in getting their employees on board. So I think it's more a case-by-case basis, or at least that's how I see it.
Thank you. Gabor, would you like anything to add? We're kind of approaching our closing statements as well.
Yeah, I think that the challenges are very different dependent on the industry and on the size of the company. And I have seen now one question in the chat about how to implement AI in the small business segment or AI related solutions. And I think that first, going to this, how to use AI, I think that in the SME segment, there are two key segments. One is who are, let's say, the IT companies who develop solutions, and then the others who are going throughout their digitalization quest using solutions developed by others. And I think that we are working on both ecosystems and both companies. But most of our services and efforts are rather going towards industries which are going to be digitalized. And in those cases, what we aim to achieve is not necessarily to further develop cutting-edge AI solutions, but start using them. And I think that's an important point. And from our perspective, based on the company size and based on the industry, what is very important is the personal factor. So even in cases where the CEO is a relatively young person, really using iPhone and digital stuff on a daily basis, but still, when we started to talk about digitalization, about the manufacturing, about the factory, the first moment when he really bought our idea was when he first saw the factory data on a screen, and then he realized, oh, okay, then 6 in the afternoon I will be able to monitor what's going on in the factory, and I can randomly check the manufacturing line X, Y, or Z, and I can immediately see the output, and then I can make whatever changes are needed. And when these are the things which are really the tangible results. And I think those are the key, and this might be different by company by company. And again, it is very personal, very much depending on the CEO, on the top management, on the owner.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm afraid this is all the time that we had for a discussion. And I know there's a lot of things we can say about digitalization and working together between companies and hubs. But really what I'm taking away from today is the 3 C's of trust building. So competence, consistency, and communication. And of course, showing the benefits of digitalization and kind of collaborating among companies, among digitalization hubs, and working together to achieve progress. So thank you so much to the panelists, and thank you to everyone in the chat who was asking questions.